And I put it in the chat, but I'm Kelly Mitchell, also here with Phygital Labs, of course, training specialist and Google trainer in Albuquerque Public Schools. And thank you everybody for introducing yourself so we know who's here. And that helps as we kind of dive into all the tools today. It helps me with some examples as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get going because we have a lot to learn and go through today. And I want you to be able to do as much as possible. So let's get going. And as others join us, they can just jump on in. So of course, we're using Google Meet today, and you can keep your microphone and cameras off. You can turn your cameras on if you would like. That's up to you, whatever you feel most comfortable with. This call is being recorded. And we really wanted to make sure we use Google Meet today because after today's call, I want to send you a follow-up so you can really get a good peek at what the Gemini in Google Meet looks like. So it actually takes really great notes and records this call. And so I want you all to be able to see that at the end. And so you'll get that in a follow-up email. And then if you're not familiar with Google Meet, just here is a little sneak peek of the tools and how to use them today, very similar to all your other Meet apps. But really feel free to use those reactions as we go because most cameras and mics are off. So that really helps me as we're going along. Like if you're really loving something or you've tried something, go ahead and throw those reactions in there for me. Feel free to raise your hand or really just jump in the chat. And any questions you have along the way or something you want to see more of, go ahead and put that in the chat for us. So today's agenda will be going over the basics of Google Gemini, kind of the broad overview, and then talking really briefly about creating those effective prompts. And today when we get into Gemini, I really want you to follow along with me and use a similar prompt to me so we can all be exploring in the same way at first. And then we will take some exploration time where I will walk you through a lot of different features in Gemini. And then we will take a look at what Gemini looks like in the Google Suite across all the different apps. So we have a jam-packed schedule. And Google Gemini is your AI assistant in Google. And so just like all these other AI tools that you are used to, it's really important when you're using it to review the content for accuracy and bias, just like we're doing with all the other AI tools that are out there. And we really like to say to use an 80-20 rule when you're looking at your content and when you're using your AI tools. So let the AI do 80% of the work and be your assistant to get you a big chunk of the way. But remember to always save 20% for yourself to make adjustments to your prompts, adjust your activities and the output that you're getting, and really customize and make it your own. And Google Gemini, and always make sure that you're keeping your data safe and not adding in their personal identifiable information. And that's a really important one too, if you're using Google Gemini with your students in our district. And if you're using it in your school district, it's probably turned on for 13 and over. So really making sure that you're emphasizing that piece with your students. And like all AI tools, make sure that you are having that human in the middle interaction and taking ownership of, crafting those prompts and adjusting those prompts and remembering that you're leading the way. And this is just a tool to assist you. Really looking for what's reliable, checking on the sources, where the information is getting pulled from. And some of the really exciting things I want to show you today is how you can use Google Gemini to pull not just from the web, but you can pull from your Drive and you can pull from your Gmail and your chat space. So you can really use it in a different way versus just using what's on the web. All right, and so this is just a reminder to all of us that AI is is huge and encompasses so many things. And with Google Gemini, we're really diving into that large language model and being able to use natural language and get back natural language responses with those interactions, and using this as a place to ask questions, explore, and create. Okay, so when you're using Google Gemini, privacy controls, your data is not shared out. So when your school district is deciding to turn this on, or your Google school district, then your data is not being shared out. And Google Gemini complies with all safety standards. It is incorporated to your workspace apps, and that data isn't shared like to train the model. And when using your workspace, that information isn't shared for advertising purposes or shared out of your district. So it really is a safe space for you and your students to be creating and collaborating and generating content. Okay, so before we jump in, I would just love to know what the experience is with our group here today. So from 1 to 3, 1 being you've never used Google Gemini, 2 being you've used it a little bit here and there. Maybe you're not using it at school, but you've used it on a personal level, or you've dabbled a little bit here and there. Or 3, like you're loving the new tools. You've been exploring Gemini, you've been looking at all the new stuff coming out. All right, so lots of 2s. We're sitting right in the middle for most of the group. That's great. So we've done some dabbling and ready to dig a little deeper is what it looks like. A few 1s in there. Thank you. And we have an expert. So feel free to help me along as we go, as I'm showing a lot of new things today. All right, so that's a great space for us to be in. A lot of people who are using and ready to learn a little bit more. So hopefully we can jump in and teach everybody a few things today. All right, so there's 2 ways for you to get into Google Gemini. You can, of course, just go to gemini.google.com to get started. You can also go to your Google Suite, and in your app menu, you can pick Gemini. You can follow along with me today and do everything that I'm doing, or you can watch and take the presentation with you and kind of use those tools to play a little bit later, or a little bit of both. Whatever is most comfortable for you is how we would like you to experience this today. So feel free to go along with me, or just watch, whatever's most comfortable. Either way, if you're going to follow along with me, go ahead and get into Gemini one of these 2 ways now. So if you do have a Google for Education account, that's really the one you want to be using, because you can use a standard Google account that's not tied to your education account, but things will be slightly different. So just know that if you're using a personal account, some of the settings might look different than mine, and that would be why. And I do have a pro account, but I'm not going to demo with that one today. So I will be demoing today with my teacher level account that does not have the pro features. So if you have a pro account and you're watching and following along with me and something's missing on my page that you have, it's probably because you have the pro version. So those are just like a few differences that we might encounter as we go along today. Okay, so if you have hopped in to your Gemini account, it should look something like this. And I'm going to hop over to mine in just a minute. But before I do, just make sure that yours is looking something like this. That means you're in the right place and you're ready to rock and roll. Throw me a thumbs up if you're going to follow along with me today and you've opened Gemini and you're going to go at our pace. So just go ahead and do like a thumbs up reaction if you're planning on following along. And if you're just here to watch and learn, go ahead and throw me one of those smiley face emojis, any of them. Happy, laughing, surprised, thinking. Maybe we're thinking. All right, so before I jump in and give you a little bit of the tour, let's quickly talk about crafting an effective prompt, and then I will start using this live in my Gemini account. So when we're crafting a solid prompt, keeping four things in mind, this might sound really familiar to many of you, but really starting with the goal. What is your end goal? What do you need? So remember, Gemini is your assistant. What do you need to get out of this interaction, right? So starting with your goal, and then you want to provide as much context as you can because this will make your prompt stronger. So what background information, like your role, how many students do you have, the grade level you're teaching, the subject, the content that you're using. Then think about adding your source materials, like referencing a curriculum, referencing standards, referencing the type of materials or curriculum you're using. And then what's your expectation? What do you want to get out of this? Is it a bulleted list? Is it an email? Is it a newsletter? So thinking about what is the outcome that you really need to work with. So thinking of those four components of a really strong prompt, today, I want everyone to really wrap their head around crafting a prompt that is a rubric. And I thought of this one because everybody uses rubrics. Whether you're in higher education or kindergarten, we all need a rubric at some point and some time so that we can assess students and student learning. So if we all use a rubric, this is a great way to kind of do something similar. Feel free to use my prompt right here and follow along using the same prompt, or you can adjust this prompt to be something more like what you would be doing. So while you are thinking of your prompt and getting it typed in, I'm going to switch screens here and jump over to my live Gemini page. All right. Let me stop sharing this one. Okay. It's taking just a minute. All right, so I'm in my teacher account Gemini page over here, and I have copy and pasted that same prompt that was on that slide where I want to create a 5-point rubric for 7th grade, and I have just put it right here in the search bar. Now, before I hit enter, I just want to take you on a little tour in case you're brand new to Gemini so that you know where all of the things are. So if you're ever having a hard time finding all of the navigation bar features, you're just going to click that Gemini star and open them up so that you can see everything over here in your navigation bar. All of your previous chats will live in this search chats, and you can search for something. This is really helpful when you have a ton of chats and you don't remember where something was, but you want to go back and find it. And that lives right there under your new chat window. And then there's the images. So if you are generating images in Gemini, this is where you'll want to go. And you'll put your prompt in here instead of on that home page. And then you can also decide what type of image you want to generate. And then library is a great feature where once you've been in your chats and you're saving documents and you're saving images and videos through those chats, they will all be saved here in your library. So you can go back and access them without sifting through the chats. So that's just a nice convenient space once you get generating with lots of content. And then the last one down here, you might not see this yet, is gems. And at the end of today, we can get to those. But once you start creating gems, those will live down here on your navigation bar as well. And then right below all of that is all of your recent chats that will live here. One of the things that I love to do, because your chats will be saved as the description that you put in. So when we click on those 3 dots next to those recent chats, you can share those chats in your drive. You can pin them to the top, which is really nice, and then they won't get lost in the shuffle if it's something you plan on coming back to often. And you can also rename them. So renaming them is really ideal for organizing your content. So that's just our quick tour. And then, oh, I lost my prompt here. So let me go grab it. Okay, so let me put my prompt back in here. And then another thing you can do when you're putting your prompt in is you can change the mode of your search. So you can do all around help, or you can dive into solve complex problems. This is going to be more for like your math and sciences, something a little bit deeper. And then the pro version has math and coding down here that you can switch to. So I'm going to switch it to Flash. You can also voice, you can speak into the microphone to give voice commands for your prompt, which is really nice, especially for our students, or when we're on the go, like we're, traveling and we're walking really fast or something. But then over here with this plus sign, you can upload files for this prompt to use and reference when you're putting it in. And you can also add documents from your drive. So this is really helpful because I'm looking to create a rubric. If I have a document in my drive that has the lesson plan, I could attach it right here, and then it will use that to make my rubric. So that is a really helpful tool when you're creating. That's part of that source part, right? Instead of just referencing content, you can actually add the content for your sources here. But we're going to just start with this prompt, and I'm going to hit enter and generate my rubric. You probably all have already done this while I was speaking. So if you did, yours might generate something like mine. And you can see I have these standards up here, and then here's my columns with my rubric. I can, of course, come down here and in the chat, I can really iterate with this. I can ask it to make changes. I can ask it to add something or do something different. Or I can copy this response and paste it somewhere else. Or in these three dots, I could just directly export this to Google Docs. I could export it to an email if I'm working with another teacher or something. Let's go ahead and just export to Docs. And then once you do that, you'll see down here on the bottom, it's creating that document for you, and it's adding it to your Docs. And I'm going to let it finish. Okay, and then once it finishes, you can actually now open it in Docs, and it will take you right there to your document. Okay, I'm going to go back to my Gemini page. And I could come down here now, and let's say I wanted this to be in Google Sheets instead of Docs, because it's giving me the option here in the three dots where I could export this to Docs, but I don't see one here for Sheets. So I'm going to, if you use your @ symbol, then you can pick your Google Workspace tool that you want to use. And I don't see Sheets in there. So let's see if it'll do it like this. Oh, so that started a new one. Look, see, so it's like, oh, fantastic. What kind of sheets do you need? So instead of doing my @ sheets, that's what I would probably do for a brand new chat. Then I could come in here and say, I would like this to be in Sheets. Before I keep going, any questions that you have that have come up while you're trying this in your own spaces? If you have any questions, put them in the chat so we can address them as we go along. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward as you're using it right now. I want to show you how you can do the same thing, but doing this in different apps. So right here, we're using Google Gemini space to chat and create a rubric, right? I'm going to copy this rubric prompt. And now what I'm going to do is go over to Google Docs. And I'm actually going to do, I want you to see from the beginning. So I'll do docs.new to bring me to a new document. So once I'm in Google Docs, all I have to do to enable Google Gemini from this space would be on the right-hand side to go ahead and click on that Gemini star, as you see it right up here on the right. And then that's going to open your chat panel on the right-hand side. And this is where you can work exactly like you were on your Google Gemini homepage, but you can do it within your docs. So if you already know you're creating a doc, you might want to just go to docs and start from there. And then I can just paste that prompt in here and click my arrow, and then it's going to start creating. I like to pick the tool that I know I need for the outcome when I know it. Sometimes we don't know, right? Sometimes you just have to go to Gemini and get started, and then you really figure out what you want after you've done some brainstorming. Okay, so now similarly, this is the one that I created by coming straight to docs and putting my prompt in. And then I'm going to go back, and here's the one that was created when I started in Gemini and then brought it over to docs. So you'll see a little bit of the difference is here. It brings over like all of the conversation and all of those pieces. Whereas when we're starting directly in docs, it's not really having like that conversation component at the top. So it's a little bit cleaner of a look for you. And once you're in here, you can come in here and edit it exactly how you would anything else in Google Docs. It's all editable. You can delete or change. If you're in here in one of the boxes, you can actually highlight that text, and then you can refine using the Gemini writing tool right here from within the boxes. You can also choose to iterate with it over here on this right-hand panel and ask your assistant to adjust this rubric for you in other ways, right? But I like where we can have this do 80% of that really tedious work when we were creating rubrics. And then we can use our 20% of the time to come in here and edit bits and pieces as you see fit. Also, like when you're in Google Gemini, the home app, when you're here in docs and you're here in your prompt panel, you can click this plus sign and you can choose to search for content from your different workspace tools. So I could pull from chat, I could pull from the web, I could pull just from the web, I could pull from content that's in my drive and the web. So that's probably the two I would be using if I'm creating something for my students or my class. I probably have content in my drive already, and I want to pull from the web. Probably don't need to pull from Gmail and chat if I'm creating a rubric in here. Okay, so if you want Gemini in docs, I think somebody was asking for that. Over here on your top toolbar, you should see the Gemini star. If you do not see this, then you're probably in a personal Google account. You're not in an education account. And so those are where some of the differences lie. So if you're in a personal account today, this is not a feature that's going to be enabled for you. You would have to like pay for an account. If you're in an education account, this will be there for you. Yeah, so it might not be paid EDU account, right? Right. So if you have a personal account, it just won't be automatically enabled. So you would have to go through some other steps here. So hopefully, right, if you're using a Google for Education account and you're training in a school that is using one of these accounts, then this would be turned on for your teachers. And this is what our teachers' accounts look like. This is not a pro version. It's just a paid education account. So here, down here in that plus sign, that's where you can add those tools, deciding where you're going to search from once you have put your prompt in. And then if you click on the tools feature here, this is where you can get to images. So once you're in Docs, you can also create images within your Docs as you're going along and planning. You can also switch when you're in Docs here. If I click on this feature right there, I can switch to the bottom. I don't like this view because I feel like it gets really lost and I forget it's there. So I like to have the navigation on my side panel because I feel like it separates it a little bit more. But if you want to see that full screen, you can switch it down here to the bottom, and I should have closed that over there. And you can switch those back and forth. Within Docs, you can also start a new chat. So if I'm like done with what I've asked for here for the rubric, but I want to like create something else, let's say for a new tab in Docs, I'm on a new tab now over here on the left, then I can switch to a new conversation. And now I have a clean chat space within Docs to start something different that might go with this. So now maybe instead of that rubric, I want a lesson plan, right? And I want them all within the same document and in separate tabs. Then you can just start those new chats as you're going along. Okay, any other questions about using Google Gemini in Docs? Okay. I know I'm kind of like going fast, and I hope it's not too fast. Can I see your chat? Let me see. Are there levels of use like the Gemini page? Oh, for the different modes that you're using? So once you know, I thought it was in here, but that might be my pro account. So I usually do have those in there, but I think that's only in the pro accounts. Yeah. Okay, good. You do have it. Perfect. So now you can explore and jump in there and open and close that right here. And then remember, you can also highlight any text within your document and use that help me write tool right here. I do like that you can match the writing style. So you can ask it to do something and match that writing style, or you can just simply rephrase it. Or if you go to more, you could say shorten and see what it comes up with. Maybe you want to add bullet points instead of a paragraph. But you can highlight any text in any Google Doc. And then you'll see here, once it edits that, it will cross off what it's taking out and then show you the changes. And then down here, you can either reject the changes and start over or do something different, or you can accept them. And if you accept them, then it just changes them. And something got changed there. There we go. So you could go through onto different ones and use those tools by highlighting, clicking that refine tool, and then you can explain what you need here. And using these tools, maybe this time I want to elaborate instead of shorten. And then seeing here how you can see all of the edits, and then you can reject or accept them as you go. Now, if you have a long email and you want to make lots of changes, let me show you what that would look like. I'm going to do it with the rubric here. But if I go in here to refine and I want to go to bulletize, I want to show you what that looks like when you have lots of changes in your paper. You don't have to accept all of them. You get to go through and accept or decline each change as they are, which is nice because it used to be that you had to change everything or nothing, and then you might only want to change one of the components. Okay, so you'll see as I go through here, whatever changes I have, I can accept or decline. And then over here, you also can accept right there. Oh, it did all of them together. Interesting. It wouldn't do that in an email. It would give you each paragraph and all the changes, so you could accept them separately. Okay, so I'm going to undo because that looked really funny. Okay, so I'm going to move on from Google Docs now, and I'm going to jump over to presentations and show you what Gemini looks like in Google presentations, Google Slides, sorry. Okay, so same thing once you're in a slide, and this is just a template. This isn't anything that I've already done, but it is just a template that I pulled in. So once I'm in here in Google Slides, over here on the right-hand panel now, there are some different features that you can use to help you along the way. So you can click on templates and you can see I picked this template and I inserted all the slides. And then everything's editable once you do that. You can also go down to what's called building blocks, and building blocks are really helpful when you know you want to add something like a list, but you don't want to have to go design the whole list and everything from scratch. So you can pull in a list and then it brings it in as like an image, and then you can edit as you want all of the boxes and move that around. And then you can also go to images and add those. I'm going through some of these a little bit quicker because I want to get to the other Gemini stuff. And then you can pull from your drive. Up here at the top, you have your banana for Nano Banana. And that's where you can help it. It will help you make your slides like a little bit more visually pleasing or make them more exciting or something like that. So you can use a prompt that's already in here, or you can come down here and you can ask to generate something for you. So this is where we're like, based on, so let's see if we can just use one of these. Let's use one of these sample ones. So if you click on it, here it is. Now in my Gemini chat box, it says generate a slide for company values and it's describing. So this is where you would use your prompt skills, right? Crafting a great prompt, giving it as much detail as you can. Put your prompt in here, and then you can decide, do I need a slide, an image, or an infographic? So let's add a new slide and click enter. And then we're letting it generate. It's taking its time. But this is where we can put a prompt in for anything that you're looking for. It gives you some examples here or options. And if you pick one, there it is. Insert as a new slide. So first I get to look at it. Then if I really want it, I can insert it as a new slide. And once you've inserted it as a new slide, now you can come down here and further edit that slide. So I can come in here and I can choose to describe how I want to edit that image. So let's say I want to, let's see if we can just change it to black and white. Sometimes it might give you an image that doesn't necessarily match your presentation that well. So you can ask it to alter it to match your presentation, ask it for more text or less text. In this case, we're just picking to replace it with a black and white image. So same image, it just changed it to black and white. And to get here, we were on our slide. And then this toolbar popped up where we could then edit the image. And then we clicked on that pencil. And then over here in your panel, you can describe those changes that you want to make. Okay, let me X out of those. You can also just click that Gemini star and open that panel like we did in Google Docs. And you can start from here with a fresh chat space and ask for anything that you're looking for and then incorporate it into your slides. When you're here, You have that same image creation tool. You also have that plus sign where you're asking which sources you want to pull from. So I'm going to turn on web. And then you also have this palette where you can add something that you've already created in your drive. So this is where you could pull from drive something that you already have. So let's say you already had a slide deck that had something that you know you needed. You can pull from there and then ask for it to create using that slide. You can, these features over here that I also want to mention is you can, because they're newer, is you can record a new video while you are in Google Slides. You can add a speaker spotlight so that your face is on there as you're presenting. And then this one down here is you can convert your presentation, your slide deck, into a video. And I'm not going to do it right now because it might be slow with us on a meet and everything, but I will jump over and show you that this is what it does look like. So I took this presentation and I used the generate video, and I selected for it to do like a voiceover, an AI voiceover. And so it does a voiceover on all of my slides and it goes through all the slides, but it also opens it up for you in vids. And once you're in vids, you'll notice over here on the right, you have all of those tools to now edit this video. So it's not like it gives you a video that you can't change. It gives you a video in Google Vids where you can then go edit it and make changes to the video that it gave you that 80%. Now you can do that 20% and add to it or change it. So that's just like a sneak peek. We're not really jumping into vids, but I just wanted to mention that that is down here. That also lives, I closed my toolbar. That also lives up here in file. You can convert to video right from here. Okay, so that was what Gemini looks like in Google Docs. That's what it looks like in Google Slides. And then I'm going to jump over to Google Classroom now. Yes, the slides do turn out really beautiful. And I love that they're editable too, because that's a key component as well now with the upgrades. Okay, so now let's jump over to Google Classroom. So I know that some of you might not have Google Classrooms, but you might be working with teachers who have Google Classrooms. So we're just going to do like a really quick one over of what this looks like in Google Classroom so that you really have a good idea for what it is if, you know, moving forward, if it's something you want to explore. So once you're in Google Classroom, over here on your left panel, you have Home, which is where you can get to your different classes, calendar, resources, and then you have Gemini right here. So this is where, if you know you're creating a rubric that you're going to share with your students, instead of starting in Google Gemini like we did in that homepage, you could create that right from Google Classroom if you're using Google Classroom. So once you click on Gemini for Google Classroom, you'll notice up here on the top, this is where you could create content and resources, and Gemini's built in right here for you. So there are all these different options to get you started, but right here is create a rubric. So if we wanted to create that rubric, then I could jump in here, and instead of putting that prompt in like we did before, we're going to add a few more elements to create that rubric, but then it's going to give it to us in a format where we can assign it to students. Okay, so I'm going to go grab my prompt one more time. Okay, now coming back over here, I'm going to put my target grade. So this is 7th grade. Okay, we'll do performance level 4 and then instructions. This is where you would put the assignment instructions. And then down here is where you're going to put what you want the students to do. So let's go ahead and put the directions in here. I'm actually going to put it in both places. And then we're going to say generate rubric. Okay, so now that same prompt that we had for a rubric, we did it in Google Docs. Now we're doing it in Classroom. This is what it's going to look like in Classroom. And the difference is it's pretty much the same rubric, which I can come in here and edit, or I can just export this to Sheets, which is really nice, or to Docs like we did before. Or I can add it directly to my class. So if I go to add to class, I can add it as Sheets, and I'm going to pick my class. And I'm actually going to just put this in as a material for my students to reference right now and say confirm. And then this is what it would look like if we're adding it as a sheet into Classroom. Remember, we could also add it as a doc into Classroom, depending on how you're planning on using it. So that was, oh, right here. So then now I can name this material sample rubric and put the description here. Okay. And then I'm ready to assign this or post it in my Google Classroom. And now it's there. So this is where it's really important with these AI tools, like trying to decide, do I want to go to Google Gemini chat space and brainstorm and get going from there because I don't really know what I want yet? Or if I already know this is a rubric for my students, it needs to be in Google Classroom, this is where you can just start in Google Classroom and do it all from one place and save yourself that time so you can work faster and more efficient, right? That's why we're using these assistants anyway, is to be more efficient. Okay, so let me see. I haven't checked on the chat yet. Talking about the old ways of only being able to create boring slides. No more, no more. Okay, before we get to the end of our session, I do want to mention you also have your Gemini notebooks. So I want to go back to my Gemini homepage. I'm going to just start with fresh chat so it looks nice and clean here for you all. If you don't see notebooks here, so if you go down here into your settings, this is where that notebook LM lives. So this is where you can get to notebooks and you can get to gems. I can get to my notebooks from here, or I can go to notebooks through your waffle or notebooklm.google.com, all of the ways. But here's where we can get to our Google notebooks, and going back to my space here, and where you can get to your gems. So if you did not have that gem there, that's just because you haven't used gems before. Once you use them the first time, they will be added to your navigation menu over here. And if I hop into Google Gems, I just want to show you the difference. I have to admit, it took me a while to really think about, like, what do I want to use a gem for? Why do I want a gem? I'm happy going to the chat space and just starting on the Google Gemini homepage. That was kind of where I lived for a really long time. But now I'm realizing that gems are so powerful when you want to create something and not have to put the same prompt in every time, right? You don't always want to say, I'm a 7th grade teacher teaching social studies. Here's the demographic makeup of maybe my class, my students, the reading levels, all of those things. So using a gem can make it easier for you. There's some here that are pre-created that you can just go in and start brainstorming, but you can also create your own. So I created this one where this is like a lesson planning gem, right? It's just here just to help me plan lessons. So every time I'm going to plan a lesson, I would go to my gem who knows what I need already and make it a little bit faster and easier. So what this is if I click on this, I've created one that is a social studies thinker helping me create lesson plans. And I have told it every time I put in a social studies standard, I want you to give me ideas for a lesson. So that's what this gem is. So if I go grab a standard, I thought I had one here ready to go. If I was to put in a standard here, then it will give me output that's going to give me lesson ideas. So here's one that I did earlier today. So I put in a standard. So New Mexico, or these are actually the standards I was searching. Let me grab one. And I'm going to go to my gem, click on my gem I made, and I'm just putting in a standard. And I have already taught my gem to give me ideas for lessons and for interactive components to do with my students. So that's what it's working on right now for me as I put that in. Okay, so now I did not have to take the time to say I'm a 7th grade social studies teacher with 100 students. It already knows that. So now it's going to give me that output of ideas for this lesson. When you go into gems, if you click new gem, this is simply where you can create your customized gem, which is your custom assistant. You name your gem, you're going to describe your gem, and then give it instructions. So this is where you say you are a social studies expert teaching 7th graders. You're going to speak to the gem, telling it what its role is and what role you want it to take on. And then you will say something like, every time I put in a standard, give me such and such output. So that's where you can, yes, it's like agents. Yes, Copilot agents. So that's where you can come in here and make your custom gems and access them whenever you want. Okay, so we went through a lot. We have about 10 minutes left. Yeah, if you don't see gems, you'll find it down here in your settings. That's where you can start your first gems. Once you start using gems, then you will see them populate in your navigation bar. Yes, you can attach materials as well. So when you're creating that gem, you can attach content down here. So when you come down here, you can add from your drive, or you can add a whole notebook. So for like myself, I have notebooks already made with all of the different websites and all of the different curriculum I would use for the 7th grade social studies. If you have all of that in a notebook, then you can just add that notebook. So here it is, and I would add that notebook, and now it will pull from there, and it will provide resources that I already have access to in my drive or my notebook. Great question, because I was going to forget that. Okay, so we are down to our last 10 minutes. If there's any other questions, I want you to put them in the chat. I'm going to come back over here to my presentation because I want to make sure that we have time for questions. I want to make sure that you have my slide deck so you can reference it later. And I want to make sure we have time to the feedback form because we'd really appreciate it if everybody could do that today. Okay, let me get back here. It's taking a minute. Okay, so I had pinned in the chat for you my slide deck, which is all the things, but they're kind of like snapshots with descriptions. So go ahead and grab that, because if this is something you would like to share with teachers you're working with or teammates, then you have all of that content to share out that we went through today. And then also you have a list of those connected apps that you should be seeing if you're in an education account. And then I just want to see. And then I did put in here a video and some information on guided learning. And that is where you can get your students in to use guided learning as essentially a tutor to be their assistant, where it's more of a question and asking and breaking content down step by step, rather than just telling you answers and revising for you. So guided learning is a great tool for your students to use as they're studying content. So there's a little bit of information in there about that. And going on from here, next steps would be jump in, be curious, explore the tools, and of course, share and collaborate out with other teachers and trainers and educators. What questions do you maybe still have? Oh, there's some long ones in here. Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that gem. That's amazing. And when you do have your gems made, you can share them with your other colleagues. So if you've created a really great one, you can share it with your colleagues as well. Yes, it is 13 plus for students. So we have it turned on like for high school. And before you go today, please make sure that you complete our feedback form. We always want to hear and learn from all of you, see what worked well. If there's anything that you still have questions about or you want to know more about, because right, this is kind of a fast and furious getting to know Gemini really quick. This was like speed dating. So tell us what you want to know more of, what you want to see more of. If you want to have more in-depth sessions on one app over the other, we want to hear that from you.
Hey, Kelly, there was one question in the chat from Georgia teacher who said that they could not see gems. And I know it's so hard to troubleshoot, like, over virtual webinar, but I don't know, like, are there any little things, little tricks that you know of that's like, oh, it might be missing if?
They might have a school account where it has been turned off.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
so probably if you're in a school account and it is turned on for all your teachers, then I would definitely ask that question at your district because your district does have the ability to turn some of those features on and off.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then Stacy is just saying she'd love to see some more examples of gems. So I know the example I always use is creating a class newsletter because to me that's just like the cognitive load I don't need in my life, but every year I would commit to do it. And so I would set up now, if I was doing it now, I would set up a gem that had like my class, my school, different things. I would ask it to check the school calendar. I would have it ask me like a couple of questions about what we did this week. So I'm not the one doing the thinking. And then it would do every single week on Friday afternoon. I can open my gem and it would know all that context and know what I want out of it. And I don't have to start fresh every week. It would just ask me a couple questions and then spit out what I can copy and paste into that newsletter. So that's the one I always use. But if anybody else has one, definitely please share in the chat because those are really helpful.
And I always like to say, you're having a hard time deciding what to use it for in your job, right? Sometimes it's like, I can't figure it out, but I want to play with it. Then do something personal, right? Create a gem for, like, I just learned how to garden and I'm really into it. So I've created a gem for helping me with like gardening. If I put a question in here, they already know what type of garden I have and what type of plants I'm already growing, right?
Yeah.
I've had friends do it for like barbecuing. So just look like jump in and play, even if it's something in your personal life, just to get used to it. And then you're going to end up finding the connections throughout the year. Like, oh, okay, this is where I can create a gem.
Right, right. I find that sometimes I totally agree that personal use just kind of comes up more, and I'm also maybe more motivated to try something new if it has a personal level of motivation. And we always remind people that gems, Copilot agents, whatever tool you're using, those are great for specifically things you find yourself coming back to over and over. Like the second or third time I'm asking a chat tool the same question, I'm like, shoot, I should make a gem for this.
Yeah.
Because now I'm like, oh, again, asking for the same, like, hey, can you help me with this thing? Deb is saying student evals. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can set up your parameters and then every time give it new information. So that's cool. And I love that. I think it's probably Richard is sharing the prompts that he's generating. So that's really cool.
I was just going to say thank you for sharing those. And everybody else, don't feel like you have to rush into the chat and copy and paste those because Gemini's taking notes for us today in Google Meet and we'll save all of the chats and it will save everything along with the video, but also just in text form. So that way you could copy and paste those chats later. So we will have those for you in follow-up. So thank you so much for sharing those, because that's why we're here, right? To collaborate and learn and hear from everybody, all the good things.
Yes. So thank you so much, Kelly, for hosting today's event. It was really fun to kick off. We do have another, just a shorter Phygital Learning Gemini webinar coming up later. I think it's in early August, because we're just trying to offer a wider variety of options for our schools that have a variety of tools. And we want to make sure that we're reaching as many educators as possible. So thanks everyone for joining, and do definitely complete the survey. This is required for us to have our official Google education status, and we would love to earn that with your support. So thanks everyone, and thanks again, Kelly. It was a great event. I learned a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, bye. Have a great afternoon or evening wherever you are.